Hi and good afternoon. On behalf of HC Andersen Capital, I would like to welcome you all to this deep dive on the UK business of H+H International. My name is Rasmus Køjborg and I'm an equity analyst here with HC Andersen. With me today to tell us more about the UK business, I have the pleasure to welcome you to Managing Director of H+H UK, that's Callum Forsyth, and also the CEO of the H+H Group, Michael Tronsegård Andersen. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And before I hand over, I'd also like to give a warm welcome to those of you who have signed up and listening in to today's presentation. As usual, you can ask questions during the presentation in the chat on your lower right. And if you're not comfortable writing in English, you can do it in Danish and I'll do the translation. And should you want to see the presentation again, we will put it on our webpage afterwards. But with that, I'll leave it to you, Callum and Michael. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. On the first page, it's just an introductory page for H+H. And H+H is a Danish listed company. As you know, we are a regional player in the Whitestone business, and Whitestone means aircrete and calcium silicate units. We are very strong number 2 in Europe. And we are focusing on 3 regions, that is Poland, Central Western Europe, and the UK. UK is about 30% of our revenue. They are producing from 3 large factories, what we are producing from 6 factories in Poland. So we have 3 very large units in Poland, and they only sell aircrete in the United Kingdom. If we look at the development for H+H the past years, we have grown mainly through M&A in continental Western Europe and in Poland, but we have been in the UK since the 50s, and we have been growing here purely organically. We have invested in the UK. We have just been upgrading our manufacturing factories, and we are working on that on a continuous basis. We have seen a quite handsome growth in the UK over the past 5 years' time. We have grown our top line with 25% and our EBIT earnings by 50%. I leave the word to Callum Forsyth, our regional managing director for the UK. We have worked together for 5 years, and Callum will be much better than me to give you a deeper insight to the H+H UK and the UK market. So over to you, Callum.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. If I move the slide myself. So I thought before I get into the UK house building market in detail and get into a deep dive, I would start the presentation by taking a look at H+H in the UK and how aircrete has developed over the years. As you can see, and as Michael said, we've been in the UK for over 70 years actually, and our first block factory opened in 1958. And in 1963, Selcon Limited was acquired by H+H Denmark. And since then, we trade now as H+H UK, but we retain the Selcon brand. It is a product brand that we use. The combination of H+H and Selcon is seen as a very trusted brand and a very trusted company in the UK. So very, very important to us. We manufacture in 3 facilities in the UK. We have Borough Green, which also acts as our sales and administration and head office. And we have 2 factories on the same site in Pollington, near Leeds and Doncaster, with a couple of distribution depots, one in Highbridge near Bristol to service the southwest, and one just outside Glasgow to service the Scottish area. The 3 factories over the years, in terms of investment, as Michael alluded to, particularly in Borough Green, and continuous production improvement, as you can see here, have enabled us to produce from 3 factories more aircrete than we did in 2001 with 4 factories, which has been a fantastic achievement and is really very helpful for us because it has allowed us to secure, as you can see on the pie chart, a very strong market-leading number 1 position. It's also been very useful to get that output because I thought I would show just where aircrete is used in the UK, just to give you a little image. And you can see that it's not only the foundations and floors, internal walls, but it's also external walls, which is this actual superstructure for the building itself. So the aircrete actually holds up the building, and the brick facade is purely there for aesthetic purposes. What you can also see is through that time with penetration, our share of the market and aircrete share of the market has grown quite substantially at the expense of timber frame. So we're very much a market leader in the UK with a very strong brand. If I take a look now at the housing market and start to deep dive, if I was to look at this, and we were doing this in the middle of 2020, it would have been a very different picture. The initial lockdown in March, the whole industry closed, and by early June, with government support, we were actually seeing the house building industry and the builders merchants start to slowly open up. They were obviously respecting full COVID restrictions, so therefore the expectation was a slow build-up. At that point, the expectation again was that we would get back to 2019 volumes in the market, at the earliest through 2022, but more realistically 2023. The reality, however, is we now expect, we are now seeing transactions at a historic high level, and the expectation from all forecasters, from house builders and merchants, is that we will be back at 2019 levels this year in 2021, something that no one particularly expected. What's driving that is clearly there was some pent-up demand coming over from 2019 into the Q1 2020, and the homeowner confidence on the back of that. The government's introduction of the stamp duty holiday, which I'll talk about, has clearly helped to stimulate the market. And we were seeing through 2020 the completion of the first phase of Help to Buy and the start up of the new phase, which will run through to 2023. What's also interesting, and I'll talk about this in the next slide, is that COVID-19 really was starting to drive some lifestyle changes as well. And we've seen the growth not only in the new build sector, but also through the second-hand markets. And the charts on the right-hand side, which I know are probably a bit of a challenge to read the detail, but really it was to show that the stamp duty holiday, the change in lifestyle, Help to Buy, etc., has driven demand in house building right through the UK, and also it's driven it right across the price range. The chart's actually showing from sort of £200,000 purchase to over £1 million, and we're actually seeing strong activity across all those sectors. I could have chosen several slides from estate agents in the UK to just give a further sort of bit of detail and reflection on what's actually happening now in the market, but I've chosen Savills, very well recognised and respected in the UK, and Connells, who are a fast-growing estate agent, having something like 10% of the market. And I think what you can see there from the Connell slides is, again, we're looking at activity, and this is looking at Q1 2021 versus Q1 2019. And you can see overall sales activity is up some 28%. And again, as I said, it's right through the country. It's not restricted to the southeast or the Midlands, etc. So strong activity right through. I think the confidence that's growing in the market is reflected by Savills, who basically say, you know, we might have expected a bit of a lull at the end of the first quarter, but with furlough being extended, the government stepping in, the success of the vaccination rollout in the UK in particular, and the extension to stamp duty avoided that cliff edge. And I think there is good confidence going forward now that we will get back to 21 levels in 2019 and then back to a more normal economic cycle through 2022. What I think is very interesting is in the bottom left-hand corner is housing transactions. This covers the whole market. So it's not only new build, but also second-hand. Since 2008, during the recession, we have since then had transactions around about 1 million a year, just under 1 million transactions a year. And you can see this year that we are actually forecasting, or Savills are forecasting, for it to be 1.4 million transactions. So substantially higher than the run rate. And in fact, they think they might have undercooked it, as they say there. And I'm hearing it could even go as close to 1.5 million transactions. So substantial uplift in the market and substantial demand in the market being driven by what I talked about previously in terms of Help to Buy, stamp duty, etc. If I look forward now to the next sort of period, looking out to 2025, again, forecasters are growing in confidence that we'll continue to see these high levels of completions and starts. We see a slight lull through 23 as Help to Buy ceases, but it will then return to normal growth through 2024. So you can see we're talking about growth in the next period at these historically high levels. That's very good for H+H in the UK, but in addition to that, we also have further opportunities where we can continue to increase the penetration and get more growth from our product in that market. I showed in the first slide where the aircrete is used. And over the past 10 years, we've increased our penetration in the house in terms of where aircrete is used by sort of over 30%. And there's still further opportunities for aircrete to be the product used in party walls, etc., and up in roof trusses. What's also driving it, as I said, is during COVID at its peak, we wondered if it was a reaction to COVID, people looking to get out and get larger space, to move out of cities. It's very clear now, and there is general agreement in the UK, that it's not a reaction, and it is actually a lifestyle change, and it is a trend that looks set to continue. In fact, people would say COVID has accelerated that trend that was growing. Now, for us as aircrete, that is very, very good for us, because we see more growth in houses than flats. There is more aircrete used in a house than in a flat. We're seeing larger houses as people want more space. Again, that's good for us. Home office working looks like it will continue in the UK to a great extent, and clearly going forward, people will want to have either an extension or a home office built. And again, for us, that really does provide us an opportunity through builders merchants to satisfy that demand. And again, because people are working less from offices and more remotely, we're seeing people moving out of cities, moving to go further afield, knowing that they will only travel briefly into the office or seldom into the office. So for us, again, that is very good. Government legislation will also drive this. The government's commitment to net zero. The first part of that is actually by 2025, what they call the Future Home Standard, which is a reduction in CO2 emissions in the house, linked to Part L, which is a specific piece of legislation driving that. The headlines that you would read would talk about no gas boilers, photovoltaic cells everywhere, but actually one of the big contributors to a net reduction will be the fabric of the building, i.e. the aircrete is a very good product with very good qualities to help drive down and make those homes much more efficient for the future. So we see that as a significant enabler to grow aircrete in the UK. Our house builders, we deal with large house builders as well as regional house builders. We know from their published figures, their expectations and projections will again deliver more aircrete for us. And a government that are committed to the house building sector. We've got Help to Buy, we've got the recently launched government-backed mortgage scheme, and those are driving people towards larger properties because they can actually afford to buy bigger. We're seeing first-time buyers in the UK buying typically 2, 3, 4 bedroom homes, which again is very good for aircrete. And then the other area that's going to grow and help us is this growth in modern methods of construction, or as MMC, as I'm sure you've heard it described. And that will grow elements, it will grow modern methods of construction, not only in new build, but also in the social affordable sector, which again is a market opportunity for us. And I thought I'd just finish on that with the definition, really, what are modern methods of construction? Because again, if you read in the press, you watch on TV, it tends to be described, everyone thinks of modern methods of construction as you build a home in a factory and then you transport it complete to site. That is true, and it is one of the 7 confirmed definitions of modern methods of construction that the government have approved. And at H+H here in the UK, we actually have 2 products that qualify for 3 of those categories. Category 2, which is about pre-manufacturing, and then category 6 and 7, which is about the skill shortage and therefore labour efficiency and labour savings in the UK. So we already have 2 products established in that market. What it does in terms of labour and skills is you can actually build the shell of a house within 5 days. That typically takes 14 to 16 weeks building traditionally. It also takes brickwork off the critical path, because you can, if you build traditionally, you have to build bricks at the same time as you build your aircrete. This allows the house builder with elements, large format blocks as we also call them, to have a watertight building in 5 days, which, as you can imagine, does speed up the process. It's approved. We've been through the normal approval processes, and we have our key users such as Barratt, etc., and some of the social housing providers using it. And the point I'd like to make is everybody talks about MMC, built-in factories, and people picking up contracts for 30 or 50 units. Since we launched in 2018, we've actually completed and delivered on over 1,500 units, and the pipeline looks very strong moving forward. And on the back of that, we've actually been recognised and won 2 House Builder Product Awards for our product over the period. So we see modern methods as another growth opportunity. And I guess in summary, to just finish my presentation before questions, I guess, is I would say we're looking at 2021 volumes back to 2019, driven by the, as I said, stamp duty holiday, lifestyle changes, etc. And we see further opportunity going forward in a market that looks predicted to continue to stay at these high levels for more aircrete to be used. So that was my presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much, Callum. Yes, we are ready to take some questions, and I can see there's a few of you typing now. So yeah, please don't hold yourself back with questions. But maybe I could start. So if I look at the, I think it was your slide 3. If I turn back here, it seems like it's basically a 3-player market. I guess that's fair to say. Does that also mean that you're not seeing sort of like new entrants that perhaps is selling below cost and etc.?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's a 3-player market with ourselves as the strong player in there, and Forterra and Tarmac as the 2 other players. Zella, who are obviously the largest producer of aircrete in Europe, they actually import. They have no footprint in the UK, and we don't expect that to happen. And we don't see any imports particularly coming in at a low cost. It's actually quite a difficult product to ship across water. You would have to have a certain strength of product, which is not the normal product used in the UK. So that does limit capability. So at the moment, we don't see it, and no expectation to see it going forward.
No, but that also brings me to my next questions regarding shipping. We don't see Ireland on your map of markets that you cover in the UK. Is that on purpose, or is it? Yeah, what's the reason for that?
Well, the market in Ireland splits into 2. You have Northern Ireland, which clearly is part of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It is a very, very small market. They'll build probably less than 2,000-3,000 homes a year. It's very small. And there is actually one of the smaller players in the pie chart there. They actually produce in Northern Ireland or right on the border. And therefore, we wouldn't be able to compete competitively in a very small market. Similarly, if you look at Southern Ireland, it's again a growing market, but again quite substantially lower than the mainland UK market. If we're building 250,000 homes here in the UK, in Ireland it's less than 30,000. So.
Okay, very good, thank you. There's also one about the raw material cost. We're seeing cost inflation in a lot of industries at the moment. How is that affecting you? And
yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, I think the fact that the market has recovered very, very quickly on the back of a full lockdown has meant that raw materials, not only produced in the UK, but people who import some raw materials, they're seeing demand at an all-time high and cost being pushed up on the back of that. Some of it linked to Brexit, and some of it linked to the short-term transactional issues around high demand in a growing market. So it's definitely out there. The list of products that are increasing is quite substantial. You look at timber, plasterboard, bricks, roof tiles, etc. Their costs are increasing as well as availability. For us, the biggest impact for us would be on cement and lime, 2 of our big components. And again, we manage that through our long-term agreements with our trusted partner customers, and therefore we have the ability to, where appropriate, obviously pass on those raw material costs. What we're also doing, however, is looking at how we can reduce the requirement for those raw materials in the first place and look at alternative sources. and that's something that we do through our production and development teams, looking at how we could replace some of those components, some of those raw materials, or use less of it.
Okay, very good. And this might be also a little bit on a group level. The other questions that we have is that how can H+H secure with forward pricing, etc. on these things? Maybe you can touch upon that, Michael, shortly.
Yes, and of course in continental Europe we see the same developments on input costs, that they are starting to shoot up due to shortages and also due to carbon taxes. Now, opposed to the UK, in Europe, continental Europe, we are very much involved in project sales, and it means that we are quoting on a running basis on a big part of our volume. And of course, first and foremost, we are measuring ourselves on our ability to pass on cost increases to our customer base. And so far we have done that quite successfully, and we believe that we'll also be able to do that going forward. It's not so easy to get forward contracts on cement in this market. That was one of the questions I can see here, that the cement suppliers are quite unwilling to give you forward contracts. So therefore, it's more a game where we simply have to be very observant about the prices, how they develop, and then be good at passing it on to our customers.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And there's one comment. It's a little bit specific, but what is the typical cost of aircrete used in a typical house? I don't know if you have any number on that, or if it's
I do actually. I mean, it obviously is. It does move because obviously there's now larger properties, but you're looking at about £500.
Yeah.
I think it's quite important here when people think about it. When you look at the volumes that we're selling in the UK, and then a third of our revenue coming from the UK, that you can see that it is more a matter of penetration and number of units, because the aircrete consumption per dwelling, which was one of your earlier slides, kind of shows that we have a fairly low level compared to continental Europe, but we just have such a huge penetration.
Yes.
Which means that, as you also have said earlier on, that the price elasticity is quite low. You sometimes jokingly say, Callum, that the price of the aircrete is less than the carpets.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's the product that holds the building together, but its value in there is less than the carpets that they give away. So.
Could you also briefly touch upon Brexit and what has been the impact, because it has caused some frustration for other companies, but it doesn't seem it's been a problem for you. Is that correct understood?
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, for us, it hasn't been so much of an issue or a problem, because 95+% of our raw materials are UK sourced. For the products that are not, which are only a couple, we basically did what everyone else did, and we now carry more stock on the ground in the UK. And so far, we haven't had any material supply issues there or any paperwork delays at the ports that you hear of. Our products have been coming in fine, but it is north of 95% is sourced in the UK. And if we needed to, if I couldn't get those other two materials, I can source them from the UK if required.
Okay. And could a side effect from Brexit also be that you can say you have this three-player market, and it will most likely be like that going forward? You know, I guess new entrants will have to set up production in the UK, to compete with you.
Yeah, they would have to set up a production facility, and you need volume to do that, and you're looking at a very established market. As I said, our H+H Selcom brand is one of the most trusted brands in the building industry. So it would be quite some challenge, I think, for a new entrant, not only to come in and establish themselves, but to build a footprint on the back of it.
Okay, very good. And also, could you give us a little bit explanation on the visibility you have in the market? How many quarters are you sort of able to look ahead, and how is sort of the how does the sales pipeline look, and who are you mainly delivering products to? Is that to building markets? Is that to construction? How is that split in the UK market?
Yeah, if I answer those questions in reverse order and start start with our customer base. So we supply what we call large house builders. So people like Barratt, Redrow, etc. These guys will be building in excess of 10,000 homes a year. Barratt being the largest building, they expect to build close to 20,000 homes next year. So large house builders we supply. We also supply regional house builders who are around the country, as the description obviously hints at. And those are guys that will build typically from 50 to 250, maybe 500 homes a year. And then we also supply the builders merchants like Travis Perkins, etc., who are the largest builders merchant in the UK, but also interestingly, the largest merchant who stock and supply aircrete. So our strategy over the years has been to partner ourselves with players who are not only large, but also use substantial amounts of aircrete. So Barratt and Travis Perkins, for example, are two of the largest users of aircrete in the country. The visibility is interesting. I mean, any forecast is always a challenge, but it's dealing with house builders in particular, and typically you're dealing with house builders who are publicly listed, therefore their forecasts are looking out some 12 to 15 months. They can give a fairly good prediction, and we then break that down on a quarterly, monthly basis. And those are long-term contracts that we have, so they're not speculative spot market deals that we do. So we will establish a multi-year deal with Barratt and then work with them on the forecast so that we know on a monthly, quarterly basis and on an annual supply basis their expectations, and therefore we can produce our production plans accordingly. So we're not in a typical spot market where we're bidding and therefore the sales pipeline needs to be large. We have it through long-term trading agreements.
Interesting, thank you. There's also a question related to your factories, and it goes on converting from PFA to sand, and maybe you should also explain what PFA is in relation to this question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no problem. PFA is pulverized fuel ash, and it is the byproduct of coal-fired power generation. And obviously, if you go back in time, back to when we were established, most of our electricity was generated by coal production. And therefore, getting PFA was a good source of raw material for us. By 2025, the UK government will no longer have any power generated from PFA. So therefore, the availability of fresh PFA is limited. There is, however, substantial stockpiles of PFA. You're talking 50, 60 million tons of PFA stockpiled, buried in the ground. And we have been using that product for many years, knowing that coal-fired generation was going to cease. So the 3 factories in the UK use stockpiled or conditioned PFA as a basic raw material. You can, however, also use sand, and in continental Europe, sand is the main raw material. The UK is quite unique and quite specific, where we use PFA, not sand. So our plans are really around security of supply of our aggregate. So I want our factories, all 3 factories, to be capable of producing using 100% PFA or 100% sand or some hybrid mix between the two. And you can mix PFA and sand together as an aggregate as part of your raw material. So that is it. It's about security of supply to ensure that we can get those raw materials on an ongoing basis. And again, we have long-term deals on PFA, and clearly at the minute we're working on our sand supply for the UK. And sand as a mineral in the UK is readily available. So that's the plan. And over a period of, I would say, the next 5-6 years, we will progressively convert those facilities. We have started up in Pollington this year, and over the next 12-24 months, that will be converted to enable it to be PFA or sand. And then following that, we'll move to Borough Green and convert that process there as well to do 100% of either or a hybrid.
Very good. And also, how much is required for these for this conversion in investment in these factories? Can you give us an indication on that?
you're going to be talking about sort of, I would say, £15 million, I would suggest, over the three to convert.
Yeah, if I may, I will say that we have told the market that our investment levels over the next 4 or 5 years will be around approximately 200 million Danish kroner annually. That is the level, and these projects are contained in these amounts. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I think we're running a bit out of time, so I think that will be the last part for today. So thank you very much, Callum, and thank you very much, Michael, for a very interesting introduction to the UK markets. And thank you for those of you who listened in today and asked some interesting questions. As I said earlier, we have recorded this presentation and will be available on our webpage later. But with that, I'll also just wish you a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.